Okay, good morning, everybody. Hope you had a great weekend. Got another break coming up. Nice break coming up, right? 4 days. That'll be nice. I need a break. I need a nice break. Get some things done around the house. Not wake up early. It'd be nice. I hope you all brought your laptops because today we are going to dedicate today to actually applying some of the stuff that we've learned about databases. But just as a little bit of a review before we get into that, what are we talking about? Databases, we're talking about what type of databases. It's the dominant form of databases in the world. What's the word we put in front of databases? What they are called? Relational databases, right? Okay. And if we think about this, is very important, the hierarchy of data. What's at the very bottom of the hierarchy of data? What's at the very bottom? What's the ones and zeros? We called those bits, right? What do bits build up to? We make 8 bits make a byte. Bytes become, bytes or characters become fields, very good. And fields are columns, right? They're like columns in our table. We put columns together and they form what? Like all the columns about Ian is stored in a. All the columns about John Vico are stored in a record or row, right? Goes by both names, right? The row part is called a record. The column part is called a field, okay? The whole thing, the two-dimensional rows and columns, is called a what? Table or file, okay? It goes both ways, table or file. And then what happens is these tables are tied to one another through a key kind of relationship. And if we talk about the keys, the unique one that identifies a row in a table is called what? It uniquely identifies, like your student ID, like your driver's license number, like your, yes sir?
Key of what? Key.
Okay.
Primary key.
It's primary key in the table that it uniquely identifies, right? So student ID is the primary key in the student table. Driver's license number is the primary key in the Department of Transportation database or driver table. When we point to it from another table, like we're saying, hey, this office visit was from student 4867. 4867 is pointing to this primary key. We call this field a foreign key, right? Because it's pointing back to a primary key. And by doing this, believe it or not, we can build very, very intricate structures through think about it, starts out at the zeros and ones levels, goes to bytes, characters, fields, rows, tables, and then we relate those tables together, and we can identify all kinds of things or represent all kinds of things. All right. And this is a relational database. And we said a couple things. This is not, a database isn't just these tables. It is tables or files, the relationships among the rows in the tables, and then metadata. What is metadata? What is metadata? Metadata is?
Data about data.
Very good. Data about data. Okay, it defines kind of what this data is all about. And we talked a little bit about a database management system. We talked about some of the ones we'll see, and the one we're going to see specifically is Microsoft Access. Okay, that's what we're going to see today. So we're going to learn a few things about it, and then there's going to be an assignment based on this. I'm going to change up the assignment. I've been given the same assignment for a couple of years, mostly because I've been lazy, too lazy to design a new assignment. And what happens when I give an assignment for a few years?
People start getting it from years back.
There you go. Very good. So cheating happens, So I'm going to make a brand new assignment this year. So I don't have it ready right now, but today we're going to do a little exercise. So if you recall, this was the example your book used, okay? It said, and remember we use a database instead of a list or spreadsheet when we have to store multiple themes, right? Multiple things. Single themes, hey, a spreadsheet's fine. But if we want to store information about students, that's one theme, and information about their visits to my office and their emails, that's 3 themes. Okay, I need 3 tables related together. I'm going to kind of simplify this, and I'm going to make it 2 tables. How do you think I can make this 2 tables? That's one way to make this two tables, and it's easily done. I would actually do this if this was real life. I guess this is real life, right? We definitely need a student table, yes? But office visits and emails are just two different types of what? Yeah, interactions or communications between me and students. There's also, phone calls, right? There's other things. So instead of making it a new table, I'm just going to make it a column in what we call the interactions table, right? It's either a phone call, a email, or a face-to-face visit. Yes, okay. So we're going to build a student table and an interaction table. But before we do, let's think about, and I don't care what it has up here, let us think about the things we want to store about students. And we're not going to store everything, but this is what we do at the first step before we start. Build a database, we design it. And that's one of the things about databases. You pre-design them before you populate them. So we said we need a student table. Okay, we need a student table. Well, what's the first thing I need to think about when I build any table? When I build any table, what's the first thing I need to think about? Every relational database table needs this column. What is it? Something that uniquely identifies every row in the table. It needs a primary key. So what are we going to make the primary key of our student table?
Name.
Student
ID.
Okay, I'm glad you said name. Why isn't name good enough?
I just
Because if you have like siblings that go here, if you just use their last name.
Sure. And my college roommate here was Bob Smith. Okay? You think he's the only Bob Smith that ever went to St. Francis? Hell no. That's an awful name. I always tell him that's an awful name to have. At least Miko. No, not too many people are having Miko, right? So I don't like John. I wish my name was a little more exotic, than John. But Miko I like. Okay? So that's why we have student ID. Okay? What else would we want to store about students? Well, we're not going to store everything, but what else do we want to store? Go ahead. All right, sure. We could put their major, and we'll just use the 4-character code, okay? Like the ACCT for accounting. You guys have seen that? MKTG for marketing. You guys know what I'm talking about? All right, so what else would we want to store? Probably anytime we store facts about people, one thing very important is, okay, so typically we break up first name, last name, and sometimes middle name into 2 fields, okay? Because then we can sort by first name or last name, right? If they're in separate columns, we can do more with them, okay? So first name, last name, what else might we want to store? So major, that's all good. What else? Anything else? Go ahead. Okay, so I think the way they store that, she said what year they're in, that's right. I think the way they store that is maybe enrollment date, enrollment year, I think that's how. So let's put enrollment date. Okay. That's good. What else? Anything else? How about if I want to contact this student? Okay. Email, and I'm going to do email, but what is another way? Okay, let's say phone number. And I'm kind of cherry picking these because I want to show you certain things. What else? We want to know, sometimes I see my roster and I see, what's a good name? I see Pat Johnson. I don't know if Pat Johnson is a male or female until I meet them, right? So maybe we want to store gender, okay? And boom, boom, boom. That's good. Okay, that's good. We can store all kinds of things about students, right? That's good. And I want, what's over here is called, we're going to call it an interaction table. How I interact with students outside the classroom, okay? So, what's the first thing we need to think about when we design a table? What's the first thing we need to think about when we design a table? The key, right? The primary key. What's the primary key of interaction table going to be? Be careful with this one, Matt. Major? Would major make it unique? Would major make it unique? Because am I only going to have one interaction with a management major and one interaction with an accounting major ever? No. Katie?
Student ID.
Okay, would that be unique? Would that, well, in the student table, it's definitely unique, okay? But are we only going to have one interaction with a student?
No.
If that was my limit, that'd be great. I'd say, okay, we've had our conversation for the year, forever. That's it, right? But that's not unique in the interaction table. We are going to use student ID here, but interaction table, it has to be something unique in that table. Lance, do you have something for me?
I was just gonna say, do like office visit or something like that.
Okay, yeah, you're right. Something like that. It doesn't matter. We'll just call it interaction ID. And what it's going to be is just a sequential number. I don't care about it. It just needs to be unique, right? It just needs to be unique. Sometimes they do this with a sequential number. Sometimes they do it with like a timestamp. Like if it was something like this, a timestamp down to like the millisecond, right? Because I can't have, well, I guess I could. If two people come to my office, I could have an interaction at the same time with them, right? But we're just going to call it interaction ID. What else do I want to store about the interaction between me and the student? What else do you think I'd want to log about the interaction between me and the student? Yes?
Who it is, like.
Okay, so this is where, Katie, I need that student ID. So I'm going to say I had an interaction with a student, and this points back to this. So we call this a primary key here. This is a primary key here. What do we call student ID in this table? Foreign key, because I can have 10, 20, 100 relationships with, or 100 interactions with a given student, right? What else would I want to store about this interaction? Probably the date of the interaction, right? Let's say the date of the interaction. God bless you. I said I want to capture, God bless you, maybe the subject of the interaction, like what the hell we were talking about. And I said, maybe I want to capture, instead of having their design, which they have an email table and an office visit table, because they're really storing the same thing, dates, message, and notes, they call it. Let's just put a category in here and say type of interaction. And in there I can have things like it was an email interaction, it was a face-to-face interaction, it was a, I don't know what else the kind of interactions I have with students. Hallway interactions, I don't know, but that's good for now, okay? All right, so we're going to build this table. We're going to build this structure and then populate it, all right? So what I want everyone to do, and we might have some differences here, but I want everyone to fire up their laptops, and I want you to bring up Microsoft Access 2013. And it looks like this. It has an A, like a book. It has a little database hanging out there. You see that? So if you go to your, if you have like an older computer like this one, if you go to your Start and go to All Programs, and it should be under like Microsoft Office 2013, and it says Access 2013. If you have one of those newer laptops, you can search it, right? You can search it. You swipe and search. You guys know how to swipe and search? And it might be a tile. You might even be able to see the tile. I'm not sure. But I want everyone to thank you. So everyone should have what Ms. Taylor has on her screen at this point. That's good. That's good. Yeah. That's exactly.
I just searched
Mine's here.
Microsoft
I've never heard that before, ever.
You got it? All right. Bobby, you got it? All right. We all good? Does everyone have Access 2013, or do some of you have 2010? 2010. Okay, they're very similar. Okay, they're not much different. Okay, so on the first screen, yours may look like mine, or it may look a little bit different, but there is definitely an option that says create a blank desktop database. Okay, blank desktop database. I want you to click on that. Okay, and here is the one and only chance, well, it's not the only chance, but the chance we get to say where the hell we're going to save this. So let's give it a name. Let's say Miko Interactions. And then please save it somewhere where you can find it later. So if I click on this little folder, I'm just going to save it on my desktop here. You can save it anywhere you like, but somewhere where you can find it later. Create a blank database. And then once you do that, yes, click create.
Where is that on this? You press the file thing.
You go to file. You already created a database.
Yeah, but
Yeah, so you have it as database. X out So blank database. Yeah, right there. See, there's your little folder.
Yeah.
Okay. You get it? Frank? Go back to that. If you're using 2010, that same dialog is on the right-hand side down toward the corner. So go back to your database. See over here? That's where yours is. See what it is? So that's where you'll name it and then move it. Did you? So over here, see that? That's where your stuff is. That's where you name it. Okay. Okay, when you find that, click Create. And now I think we'll look fairly similar. We have this page, everyone? 2010 people, your page look like this? Okay. So, a couple things, okay? Over here in the left navigation, okay, you guys see the left navigation? There's some things we can look at. In this database management system, we have tables, which is what we're going to work with here first. Queries, what did I say queries are? We don't have any queries at this point, but what are queries? They're like questions. They're like me asking the database a question. And we have forms and reports. I think you know what those are. So right now I'm seeing all access objects. That's fine. Okay? Now, you should see a view button. Do you guys all see a view button? 2010 people, you see a view button? Yes? There are two views that we're going to use. Okay? The one is called datasheet view. That's what you're seeing right now. Okay? That's what you're seeing right now. Datasheet view is as if you're envisioning the table itself, okay, where we enter in the data. Do you know what I'm saying? But right now, we haven't built the design yet. So we want to build the design first. So I want you to switch this view to design view. And at that point, it's going to say, well, what would you like to name your table? Let's call it student. And then click OK. And you should come up, and hopefully, I think the 2010 should look very similar to this. This 2013, but it should look the same. Okay, so what I've done is I've created a table, a structure called student. Okay, it's a table. What I'm doing now is designing, if you will, the fields or the columns that I want to store about every student in this table. You see the first one says ID. Well, we can't use spaces in this, but I'm going to call this student ID. And usually the way that programmers do this is they use a capital for the one word and then a lowercase and then a capital for the next word, so you can kind of see, hey, it's two words, student ID. Okay. What do you think the little key beside student ID looks like? Because Access is saying, hey, you better have one of these. What did I say every table needs? It's a primary key. Okay, and I can, it thinks the first field, and 99 out of 100 times that's a good design, the first field should be it. Now if I leave this data type, okay, let's go over to data type, and you'll see this is kind of like metadata. This is data about data. This is, we're saying what am I going to store in here? And the default was auto number. What auto number does is the first thing you enter is a 1, the second one you enter is a 2, the second thing you enter is a 3. It just gives you a sequential number. An ID can be a sequential number, but in our case, we're going to say we actually have a number. Like you guys were given a student number generated by the school, right? So let's go to number, not auto number. If we left it auto number, it would put in the number for me automatically. I'm going to put in number. Okay. And then down at the bottom, you see there's field properties. Remember, columns are called fields. There's other properties we can add. And we can say this is a long integer. That probably makes sense. But if we click on that field size, okay, there's a drop down. You see this little drop down? And we can store it as, and you don't need to know all these, but there's integer. There's different things called like a decimal representation. Like if this was, currency, maybe I'd store it as that so I could have decimal places for cents. There's single and double. That's for like longer numbers, and it's the level of precision you have, the single precision or double precision. You don't need to worry about that. Let's just call it long integer, and we're good, okay? Just call it long integer. Now, this up here, so let's leave it at long integer. And then right beside student ID, it says description. This is optional. This is called metadata. This is metadata. This is data about data. So what I might do in this is I might describe. Okay, I would say this is where the university supplied student ID goes. That is data, information about data itself. Let's go to our second field name. Okay, so we have one field already stored. You guys said, let's move the order. Let's put first name and last name. That makes sense to be next. So let's move major down here. But let's do student. And a lot of times in a table we give everyone the same starting prefix or word. So we're going to say student first name. Just can't. I don't know.
Mine can.
Why is the sky blue?
Mine has spaces.
Minus space, yes,
You
space.
can click the space bar, but it doesn't say it.
That's blue.
You're not doing it though, are you? I don't know if that's gonna work. You can try it. Student first name, okay. Now, we're going to call that
Okay,
Okay.
short text. And the property we want to change down here is it says field size 255. Do we want to give 255 spaces for first name? I think it's a little unreasonable. Let's say, I don't know, what do you think a long first name is? Jeremy?
Here's a question. You said short text, mine just says text.
Yeah, I think 2010 will just say text, but it should look the same. What do you want to give spaces for first name? How many spaces? How many characters?
25.
Yeah, let's go 25. I like that. Okay. So we change this down here to 25 characters. And this is where, I'm not going to do this for all of them, I just want the student's first name is stored. I'm going to create the exact same thing, but I'm going to say student last name. So this next one's going to be student last name. Whoops. And I'm going to give that 25 characters max as well. I join the field size. So text is pretty easy, right? Like first name, last name, text, that's pretty simple. I like Jessica's suggestion. She said, hey, well, how about we use major? Okay, so the next one down, I'm going to store student major. And what did I say? I'm going to use only the 4-character version of this, right? So let's use only 4 here, right? So when they enter in, they're not going to be able to enter in more than 4. Now that might confuse them. They're like, what the hell? My major is electrical engineering, / basket weaving, right? So that might confuse them. So when we build a database management system like this, we may want to give them a caption that tells them what we're asking for here. So down the bottom, I said 4 characters, and in the caption, I'm gonna write, please enter the 4-character short code for your primary, for the student's primary major, I guess I should say. For the student's primary major. Okay, the next field, let's do enrollment date. So I'm going to put in here student enroll date. What data type do you think I should choose for enrollment date? Date/time, right? We're going to say, hey, we want a date in there. So date/time. Okay. Now date/time is pretty wide open, isn't it? I mean, think about it. You could write January 1st, comma, 2014, 1 p.m., whatever it might be. So we want to kind of guide them on how to enter this, okay? So if we go down here to general, you see this input mask? You see input mask? What an input mask is if you've ever gone and filled a web form and you see something like this. How's it look? I think it has like 3 spaces then. You pretty much know I need to enter a phone number in there, right? So that's what an input mask is. It gives you like a mask for our input. So let's go to input mask. Let's hit this little ellipse button. That's an ellipses, I think you say it's something. Ellipse. Those three buttons, three periods in a row. That's a grammar thing. But what it means is more, right? It means more. So click on that and see what our options. Oh, must save table first. Yes. Save now. Okay, and it says, all right, how do you want this to enter in? Doesn't give us many options as I was hoping. Let's do short date. Let's see what next tells us. Now let's just finish at this point.
short date?
Yep, short date. Let's do 2 more fields for student. Student phone. What do you think phone number is in most systems? You'd think. Why isn't it in most systems? Some phone numbers have what? Like especially business phone numbers. They have extensions, and a lot of times you see like EXT, like extension, or X, which means extension, and that's not a number, right? And systems can't store X as a number. So let's call it short text, and then an input mask. I want you to click those 3 ellipses again, save your table again, and you see they have some predefined input mask, and one that they have is for phone number. You see the phone number? And just select that, and click finish. Okay, and it builds, there's some coding behind this mask that you see here, but I'm not going to teach you that. You don't need to worry about that, but let's just use the predefined input mask. And the last one we're going to enter in is student gender. And let's store student gender. So M and F are the only 2 options, okay? So for field size, what do you think we want to select there? 1 character. Right? It's either M or F. But we want people to understand, we don't want them to enter in like, I don't know, G for girl or B for boy. We only want them to be able to enter M and F, you know, or whatever. We want them to understand that. So how do we prevent them from entering garbage data, if you will? So it's standardized. Matt?
Put in the caption and choosing the hammer.
Okay, we can do that. That's one thing. Guide them, right? Please, that would be one thing. But it's still, people are idiots, right? They don't read instructions. They move on, yes? When you design a database or a form, you know, they always say design it for like a 5-year-old. And it's true. Katie?
In the input mask, can we make it so the only options they have are
Okay,
MRF?
okay, that's a very good thought. It's not an input mask, but you're right. Let's only give them the option of MRF, right? So that's the only option we're going to give them. And the way we do that is not an input mask, but over here in lookup. Okay, so click on, you guys see the tab that says lookup? Okay, and what this is the standard display controls a text box. And a text box is just, you know, just a box you put text in. But instead of a text box, let's use something called a combo box. And a combo box is what you call a drop-down. Okay, that's the programmer term for what you guys call a drop-down. You know what I mean when you click a drop-down window and you see the options? So we're going to call it combo box. Now, I need to tell it what goes in the combo box. One way I can design what goes in the combo box is by doing a table or query off of existing values. That's not what I want to do in this case. So I'm going to change this row source type from table query, this is actually a combo box, to value list, because I'm going to give it values. So go from table query to value list, and then in row source, I want to give it, you guys with me, or am I going too fast? And for row source, I want to give it the options, so I'm going to say F, comma, M. Okay, so if I wanted to give it, I don't know, let's say I want to give it other as well. So FMO. Okay, we'll give it 3 options. Separated by a comma. You guys with me? Okay. Okay, so we've built this table, right? All well and good. We need now to build our interactions table. So I'm going to go up here to create. You guys have create for 2010 people? Okay, and I want to create another table. So create another table. And you see we have a tab now that says student, back to our student, and one that says table. And it's table 1. You all right, Plumman? Now, right now we're in data sheet view. How do I get back to design view? Because I want to design this table as well. Okay, so I'm going to go to view. I'm going to go to design view, and it's going to say, hey, you better give this a name now, and I'm going to call it interactions, whatever you want to call it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to design as a primary key, and I'm going to call it interaction ID. And this one I want to leave auto number. What this is saying is, I don't care about this, right? Just the first one, first interaction is going to be interaction 1. The next one you enter is going to be interaction 2. The next one you enter is going to be interaction 3. Go down to the second one. The next one is interaction student ID. And what was student ID? What do we save student ID as it over here? What was it? You guys remember what data type it was? Because I want to make this match that. What was the data type? It was number, and it was specifically what kind of number down bottom? Long integer, right? So we want to leave that. So it's number, long integer. Let's do, am I going too fast? Let's do interaction date. So we already know how to set up a date field. So interaction date. I'm going to change this to, change this to date time. Down here under input mask, I'm going to hit the ellipses. Tells me I have to save the table. Excuse me, I'm going to save it as short date again. I guess I could store the time as well, but I don't care about, let's say I don't care about the time. I just want to know the day it happened. Next one is interaction subject.
You said short date, right?
Yep. And this one, I want a lot of room, right? I want a lot of room here. So I'm going to use long text. And those of you in 2010, you may not have long text because I think that's new. But you may have something called memo data type. I think it's the memo data type. Do you have that, Frank?
Yeah.
Okay, that's like long text. It's like, you know, like you can write paragraphs in that, okay? So I want you guys in 2010 to use, instead of long text, use memo data type, M-E-M-O. Okay, and the last thing we're going to do is interaction type. We'll leave it at short text. But I want to do specific types. I have email, face-to-face. What are other interactions I could have? Phone, there you go. Yeah, let's go down to lookup. Let's change that to a combo box. Let's change the table query type to value list. And then in row source, I'm going to say email F2F, and phone.
What did you type in there?
So if I click back on that field, I get those options back. I typed in email, no spaces, F2F, and phone. If I was going to put spaces, like E space mail, what I'd want to do is put double quotes around that. You know, so it knows it's one thing. You know what I mean? E, double quote, E, space, mail, double quote. All right, so all we've done now is design our tables. But a database isn't just tables. What is the second thing a database is made up of? Remember that little slide I showed you? It said databases are tables plus relationships. Now we need to relate these tables together. And this is a tricky part, okay? So Access is kind of funky about this. So we need to close out our tables before we relate them together. So hit your X over here to close out your table, close interactions. You want to save? Yes, please save. I should have saved. And then close out student. So hit the X to close out student. Do you want to save? Say yes. Okay, so I have these two tables. Now I want to relate them together. So go up to Database Tools. The X over on the far right. So I think on 2010 it might be right on the tab. I'm not sure. I can't remember. Did you find it? Okay. Now go to Database Tools. Is that what it says in 2010, Frank? Database Tools?
Yes.
Okay. Go to Database Tools. And then click on Relationships. And it says, all right, what tables do you want to work with here? So it says, what tables do you want to show? I'm going to show interactions, so I'm going to click Add, and I'm going to show students. I'm going to click Add. And I'm going to click that. I'm going to close that. So you see, this is what... So once you go to Relationships, it says Show Tables. I'm going to show both of them. You guys good? Everyone here? All right, now I want to build this relationship. So I'm going to go up to Edit Relationships. You guys see under here, Tools, it says Edit Relationships. Christine, did you find it?
I'm working on it.
It's on, you have 2013?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. And you come up with this little table. And I want you to go to Create New, because we're creating a brand new relationship. Jeremy,
What did you click on there at the top?
what's that?
What was the tab that you clicked to open that?
We clicked on Edit Relationships over here. Do you see Edit Relationships? No? Okay. So Edit Relationships and then Create New. How are we relating these together? Actually, I have it drawn up here. How are we tying these two things together? Okay. So it really doesn't matter here, but my left table name, I'm going to put in as student. My right table name, I'm going to put as interactions. My left column name is student ID. And I'm going to relate it to what field in interaction table? Interaction student ID. I'm going to click OK. Now, one box that I want you to check, very important, and we'll explain this in a bit, that box that says enforce referential integrity. What that box is telling us is that I'm not going to be able to add an interaction for a student unless that student is already in my student table. Okay, did you ever try to, you try to text a contact, you have to add them to your contacts before you can like text them. Do you know what I'm saying? Like under that contact ID. That's kind of the same thing. We have to add the student to the table before we have an interaction with them, or at least before we store it. So click on Enforce Referential Integrity. You can leave the other things alone. And then click Create, not Create New, because that'll just open up that whole damn thing again. Click Create. Up top is Create. And see how I tie those two things together? Yes? It has a 1, and what's the little sideways 8 mean? Okay, what's that saying is that's a one-to-many relationship. One student can be in the interaction table many times, right? I can have many interactions with a student. Okay, so great, we've built these relationships. Let's close it out now, okay? And I know we're running out of time, so bear with me. Close that out. Do you want to save? Yes, please save. And this time I want to go to the student table. Okay, double click on it. And it's in design view. And I want it to be, it's in data sheet view, and I want it to be in data sheet view this time, because now I'm going to enter data in this damn thing. So let's say my first student is 1234, that's their ID. Their first name is John, their last name is Miko, and, oh shit, what's this say? Please enter, what was this? I can't remember.
4.
Oh, that's the major code. Yeah, I got to change that. I should have put major code. And then, well, so let's call that, what was I? I was MIS. Enrollment date 01/01/1989. My phone number 814-554-1212. My gender, male. Okay, click on the next one. I can enter another student. Here's what I'd like you to do. I know we're out of time. What I'd like you to do, save this, is I'd like you to enter 5 students and then 3 interactions. So just make up students, make up. And then 3 interactions. Now when you enter an interaction, what do you have to put in that student interaction student ID? What does it have to point back to? So I couldn't enter 1239 in that student, because it's going to say, I don't know any 1239. 1234, I know. Okay, so these all have to be unique. So just save this, and by the way, just saving it, just go to File, or just click the save up here. File, save, whatever, however you want to do it. X out of it, and then we're going to bring that up starting Wednesday, and then also Wednesday I'll give you an out-of-class assignment to see if you can do it on your own. All right, have a great day.